Hi, it's Pat Gillis here. I remember a few years ago I was trying to teach a lesson in this very field, and we had a few jumps set up, and it was, just something fun for the kids to sort of hop over out in the field. And I remember looking around and thinking it's kind of flat, like a little bit rolling hills, but there's no trees or bushes or anything to kind of identify where I actually wanted the kids to go and how I wanted them to get their line correctly to the fence, to the jump that they were going to go over. So I remember kind of looking, and I noticed there was this little kind of lump in the grass, and so I said to the kids, just go down there past the grassy knoll, where the second shooter was. And then I laughed and all the kids just looked at me completely blankly. Now, there might be some of you who are my age who will get the reference to the Kennedy assassination, and you may or may not find it funny. I thought it was funny, but the kids just looked at me completely blankly. I had no idea what I was talking about. And anyway, it kind of reminded me of something a wise person once said, and that is that history tends to begin the day that we were born. In other words, we aren't very good as a species of learning what's gone before. And that goes for young people, for adults, nations, countries. We don't seem to learn from history. And it's the same thing with horses, to be honest with you. If you look at, I think it was 400 BC, Xenophon wrote this treatise on horsemanship, I believe he called it. You should Google it. It's really worth reading. All of the sort of principles that we would believe in as riders nowadays is what he talked about in 400 BC. Now, if you don't mind having nightmares, you should look up what kind of equipment people used on horses in the Middle Ages. I mean, it's like a torture devices these people were using on these horses back then. And it just goes to show that they had not, Xenophon's work was lost. And it wasn't really until, I guess, the Enlightenment that people started to sort of re-look at what Xenophon had written, and other people like that. And they sort of came around to realizing that there was a better way, a kinder way, or a more humane way to treat horses than the way they did in the Middle Ages. Thank goodness. Right? And I sometimes find that even nowadays, training horses, we tend to sort of not pay attention enough to the masters, the people who came before us. There's so much great literature on how horses think, how the best training methods come about, that it seems almost unfair to the horse to experiment with things that have already been tried before and proven not to work, right? So I think it's sort of, like the expression is, we stand on the shoulders of giants, that we should study the masters, and then we can innovate if we want to, right? If we have an understanding of the basics, the really good foundation. It's like, what's his name? Is it Caprilli? The Italian fellow in the 1900 or turn of the century, 1907, I think, or something. He developed a different way to ride horses when they're jumping. So he sort of, I guess, invented the modern forward seat or jumping position. In times gone by, if you look at old photographs, these guys were riding with their feet way up in front of them, their hands held high, holding the horse's head up to land on the other side of the jump. And the theory behind it was that horses landed, they thought, horses, if they could get the horse to land with his hind feet first rather than his front feet, and it kind of makes sense in some weird way, I guess. The horse is more powerful behind. They figured it would save the horse's front legs if they could do that. So they held the horse's head up in order to try to get him to jump and then land with his hind feet first. Now, Caprilli at least had the advantage of photography. He was able to look at photographs of horses and see it was patently nonsense to think that you could make a horse jump that way. I mean, he's almost like a patron saint, I think, for jumping horses, because he figured out this forward seat position where you could go with the horse over the jump, which was a blessing for the horses. So it's not to say that innovations aren't possible in this industry. They really are. But I think we owe it to the horse to not repeat experiments that were unsuccessful if they've already been practiced. Do you know what I mean? Like if we are thinking of something completely unique and we have done our research and we realize that no one else has ever tried it, then it's a worthy investment in our time and a worthy investment in the horse's time. But just to repeat things that have already been proven not to work seems like kind of a waste of time and kind of not very fair to our equine partners. So again, I guess I would say that I'm not against innovation per se, but I do think that it should come from a really sound understanding of the basics. I think it's Picasso who said, maybe says it best, really. He said that first you must learn the rules so that you can break the rules. And I think that should go for our equine partners as well. They deserve it. Okay, see you next week. Thanks.